Hello friends, this is Growl. In this video, I'm going to go over my first impressions of Discipline Priest for Mythic Plus in the Dragonflight beta. This priest traditionally has been a healer that struggles to find its place in dungeons. It's been an iconic and powerful raid healer, however almost to its detriment where it just can't deal the damage or consistent throughput that's needed when solo healing in a dungeon group. I think this is definitely starting to change in Dragonflight though, with some great new changes mostly coming in the talent tree. I'll go over what's new with Discipline in Dragonflight, along with how the class felt in keys and how it stacked up against some of the other healers. One really big change is that you now have access to many Holy Priest spells. Shadow Mend is gone, and instead you now have access to Flash Heal, which grants atonements in its place as well. Power Word Shield has been reworked, and now is a much bigger absorb with a short cooldown. This is an awesome change, I think, because you actually use your Power Word Shield as a way to shield allies, as opposed to just using it to apply atonements. Previously, you would almost never press this button in dungeons outside of Rapture, unless you needed to apply an atonement. Power Word Shield actually makes up a significant part of your healing now in dungeons, paired with some strong talents that buff it. Since it isn't spammable, you now also have access to Renew. This sort of acts as the instant cast spammable atonement. You don't really press it that much because it's not mana efficient, but it is important to have when you can't hard cast a Flash Heal. Shadow Word Death has also been improved to heal through atonement. Alongside that change is several talents that buff it, including reduced cooldown if it doesn't kill its target while under 20, and reduced damage done to yourself. This gives Dis some very cool execute healing potential, which is nice considering that the end of the fight is when you're going to start running out of mana or cooldowns. Power Word Life is also a very strong healing ability that does an insane amount of healing on a 10-second cooldown, but only if the target is below 35% health. If the target is above that, the healing is significantly reduced and the cooldown is 30 seconds. Although this ability costs a lot of talent points to get, it really feels good in the Discipline rotation. Every priest knows that feeling when their ally steps in something bad and just goes to low HP, and now you have to spam single target heals just to get them back up. Now, when they drop below that threshold, you just shoot them a Power Word Life, one quick global, and their health immediately goes right back up. Another gameplay change is Twilight Equilibrium. This is a passive that makes it so when you cast a shadow spell, it buffs your next holy spell, and when you cast a holy spell, it buffs your next shadow spell. The goal here is to weave in between shadow and holy, giving you a bit more to think about in your rotation. It isn't a huge damage buff or anything, but it's a cool way to kind of min-max and improve. I did find some frustrating interactions on the beta. For example, a Power of the Dark Side proc on your penance would not make it a holy spell, or sometimes if spells were queued back to back, it seems like you wouldn't get the buff. I expect a lot of this stuff is going to get fixed by release though, but I did want to point that out. Although there were a few different build styles, I really like the machine gun penance buffing talent build. You can take so many different talents that buff your penance, making it insanely powerful to press, even for healing. One charged penance could easily top somebody from very low HP. It's also incredibly mana efficient, so I found myself able to sustain a lot longer without having to worry about mana, in between using Power Word Life and penance as spot heals if needed. Another cool talent is Protector of the Frail. This reduces the cooldown of your pain suppression every time you use a Power Word Shield. Pain suppression is an incredibly powerful tank defensive, and I think this makes Discipline honestly one of the best tank healers. Alongside using Rapture and Barrier, they now have a more frequent pain sup. All of these things combined end up with one simple fact that makes this priest so incredibly fun to play, and in my opinion, the best version of Discipline that we've seen so far for Mythic Plus. You don't have to spam Smite and Shadow Mend all the time. In the last key that I did on the beta, 30% of my healing was from Power Word Shield, and another 30% was from Atonement. Add in your Penance, Divine Star, Power Word Life, and you're basically almost never spamming single target heals. Repeatedly casting Shadow Mend instead of DPSing led to low damage, drained mana, and overall a frustrating way to have to play your character. It's definitely true that there's going to be some dungeon fights that are really tough on healing, and you might need to do a little bit of heal spam, but it's so much less than what you had to do in past expansions. This class is so fun right now that even if it doesn't end up being the #1 healer, I think it's good enough that there's still going to be some Discipline mains in high keys. To continue piling on the good news, there was also a major change to the passive Sins of the Many. Previously, this buffed your damage if you didn't have many atonements out. It would probably end up being something like 3 to 5% overall damage gain in a dungeon. It's been reworked to be a flat out 30% damage buff in Mythic Plus, and the drop off for atonements only happens in raid or when you have 6 or more. I was actually able to put out damage numbers that were not bad at all while I was healing dungeons. Normally, this is just not the case when you play Discipline. You're not doing quite the same damage that you can do as some of the other top healers right now, but there's 2 reasons that that's still a really good thing. Number 1 is that Disc Priest damage is passive, meaning you are still blasting even when you need to do healing. This is really valuable on tough bosses when other healers need to just stop DPSing to heal. You're still putting out close to max damage. Number 2 is PI. Although I didn't talk about it much and it doesn't show up on the meters, we saw at the end of Shadowlands how powerful PI can be if paired with the right class. If Disc Priest is even close to the damage that other healers have, PI is definitely going to put it over the edge. Before I convert everyone who made it this far into a Disc Priest main, I do want to mention some of the downsides. First of all, Disc Priest is incredibly difficult, probably the most difficult healer for Mythic Plus. You have to make really good use out of your cooldown spells like Rapture in order to make it through mechanics that some other healers can just sort of brute force with their healing. On top of that, Priest got pretty unlucky with defensive options. While most healers have actually crazy defensives right now, Disc Priest has almost nothing. You're incredibly squishy and slow. It's a lot harder to survive as a priest than it is something like a druid or a paladin. The combination of a complex rotation alongside a slow and squishy class means that you're going to be on the floor if you're not playing really well with good knowledge of your class and the dungeons. There are some defensive talents that you can take, however, they're at the very end of the class tree. Since Mind Games has gotten nerfed, it's possible that maybe you only put 1 point there and use those extra talents to tank up a bit, but even with that, you're not gaining that much in the way of survivability. Overall though, I'm really liking Discipline Priest. It's one of the classes I'm finding the most fun on the beta, even if it is a bit challenging. I really encourage you to give it a try if you're up for the challenge, or if you're normally a Discipline fan, but you sort of write it off for Mythic Plus since its performance hasn't been great over the last couple expansions. It feels like there's so many boss fights that have that bursty group damage, and Disc Priest really strives on that when you can just throw down a barrier and protect your whole party, or pre-shield everybody with Rapture. I suspect there's still going to be some challenges, some of the same weaknesses that you had, stuff like really long rot fights or the Grievous affix. There's actually rumors right now that Tyrannical Grievous combo might actually come back, and I'm not going to be looking forward to that if I was playing Discipline Priest. But that wraps up my thoughts on Disc Priest healing and Mythic Plus for Dragonflight. I know that some people might be bummed losing spells like Shadow Mend or Shining Force, but I really do think this is a huge improvement to the playstyle. If you're looking for more Dragonflight Mythic Plus content, definitely subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting regularly up until and through the launch of the game. I'm hoping to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Good luck with your healing adventures and happy keying, friends.